Are you familiar with Julian Smith? In a day and age when people become YouTube famous, he was one of the original viral stars. In my opinion, he's one of the funniest people on the internet. At the time of this book, he has 1,629,748 subscribers, 310,072,207 total video views. He's very creative, clean, and hilariously different. Malk, Hot Kool-Aid, and 25 Things I Hate About Facebook are a few of his top hits. You've probably seen some of his content. If you haven't, you have my full permission to hit pause and spend a few minutes watching some of his videos. I recommend those from the 2009 era. In one video, the character Julian plays has concocted a rather interesting drink, which he offers to a friend. The plot escalates as he keeps getting obnoxiously offended that his friend won't take a drink of the hot Kool-Aid he made using a coffee maker. Boy, that was weird to say. And after arguing for some time about why his friend needs to try this amazing drink, Julian finally yells at the top of his lungs, "I made this for you!" After that video went viral, Julian began using the same quote as a closing logo animation in all of his videos. As the scene would fade to black, his logo would appear and one would hear an unexpectedly loud yet familiar yell. It was a touching and strangely personal way to end each piece of content. If we were in the same room, I would hand you this book and yell the same line. "I made this for you!" Then people would stare at us, things would get awkward, and you would probably stop following my Snapchat story. But really, I wrote this book for you. I sort of did it for me because I had to get what was in my brain and heart out onto paper, but I mostly did it for you because I wanted to create a resource that would equip people to tell their stories well. I wanted it to be funny, personal, well-written, and empowering, and I feel like I at least nailed 3 of those. I wanted it to have real stories from my own life, interwoven with helpful nuggets and storytelling principles that could transform the way you see your story. You know those moments in life that stick with you, those things that someone says, often off the cuff, that you can't get out of your head? I remember hearing a strong, faithful man of God talking about the walk of the believer. He spoke of how at the end of your life, only one thing will matter: your personal history with God. Did you just attend church, or was your life made up of a series of God moments that reveal a vibrant relationship with the Lord? Unfortunately, for many Christians, tangible encounters with God are rare instead of normal. What if this whole relationship with God thing is easier than we've made it out to be? There's a saying that's been around for years now on t-shirts, bumper stickers, and even book covers. Christianity is a relationship, not a religion. But do we even know what that means? I think there are times when this phrase is quoted by people who don't actually have a relationship with God at all. Sure, they believe He is who He says He is, but He's not a part of their day-to-day life. When I think of this phrase, I picture a couple who has been married for several decades, joyfully recalling their years together as they flip through a photo album. You can always tell when couples have a rich history together. It's almost as if you can feel the love they share. Remember the time our house flooded and we had to camp out in the backyard for a week? Remember when we drove that old junky Civic and we had to turn off the AC when we were going up a hill to keep the engine from shutting down? These are not moments we spend our single years dreaming about, but they are the moments that make up a rich history of sharing life together, both the highs and the lows. This couple will tell you that holding their relationship together took more than fairy dust or unicorns. It required embracing the gritty side of love that we don't see often posted about on Facebook. It may be challenging at times, but it's rich and beautiful, a love that can only come when we embrace both the highs and the lows. This is a deep mystery, how suffering and pain can strengthen a bond, but I've seen it happen time and time again. Does this sound like your relationship with God? Could the two of you hang out on His front porch drinking lemonade out of frosty mason jars as you thumb through a photo album filled with memories? Could you sit back and remember the last time He felt so close that you could almost taste His presence? The time you needed a miracle and He came through at the last minute? The moment you surrendered your life to Him for the first time and received His life in exchange? Can you recall the memories? Are they floating on the surface of your heart or lost somewhere out at sea? More importantly, are you creating new memories? Is your relationship a thing of the present or just a distant memory from the past? When you talk about the moments you've had with God, are they forced and robotic, or are they filled with life? Are your stories filled with dry Christianese, or are they a gushing invitation to jump into an adventure with Jesus? As Christians, the light and the hope of the world lives inside of us, but most of us aren't very good at communicating it. Like all of us, I've had my fair share of ups and downs in my walk with God. There have been times when I felt like I could reach out my hand and He's right there, and other times when He seemed more distant than a cousin you only see every 5 years or so at a family reunion in Michigan. During those distant times, it felt like I was grasping at straws. I didn't want to spend time with God because I felt distant from Him, but I was distant from Him because I wouldn't spend time with Him. I had no desire to pray or read my Bible when in fact that was the very thing I needed to jumpstart my relationship with God. A vicious cycle indeed. I remember one season in particular, right after I got married, when it felt like I needed a back to the future moment. I wished I could travel back in time and see key moments that God had unfolded in my life. I needed to be reminded of our history together, about the love we once shared before I let my heart grow distant. It was strange how forgetful I could be at 25 years old. I would pick up book after book, longing to be transported back into a meaningful relationship with God. I knew that a book alone couldn't do this, but still I searched. The only problem was it seemed as though with every book I read, the author had already arrived. There was so much deep theology and knowledge of the scriptures, but few real-life personal stories, let alone stories of times when they grew distant from God and longed to be close again. After reading countless books, many by renowned authors, there was still a growing need in my soul. Perhaps there was some deep theological truth that I was missing, or maybe I just needed to go back and remember the stories I'd already recorded in my personal history with God. In his book, Chase the Lion, Mark Batterson writes, "Something about going back to a place where God has proven Himself faithful builds our faith even more. It's not just a walk down memory lane. Those memories fuel faith and stoke the imagination." This is the very reason why I began writing this book. It's the book I wish I could have read during that season in my life. Along the way, I've found that a huge key to this thing called faith is the power of story. Deep theology and principles are nice, but it's often the stories of those who have gone before us that give life to our faith. Even the gospel itself is presented as a story, and each of us have a story of how its truth changed our lives. In this book, you'll find a collection of stories. Some are mine, while some are those of others that have impacted my life. My hope is that these stories will draw you closer to God and give life to your own story, providing the clarity and strength to tell it well. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. 1 Peter 3:15.